It was 2 weeks to Christmas, and Kalin's house was buzzing with excitement. The smell of freshly baked chin-chin filled the air, mingling with the chatter of her 10-year-old brother, Ikenna, who was running circles around their mother. Kalin sat cross-legged on the living room floor, folding her clothes into a small pink suitcase. Her eyes sparkled as she held up a red dress. "Mummy, do you think Auntie Efima will like this one?" she asked, her voice filled with a mix of excitement and nerves. Her mother, Amora, glanced over from where she was frying puff-puff in the kitchen. "She will love it, my dear. Just remember to behave yourself when you get there. And don't forget your manners," she said, flipping a puff-puff with expert precision. Ikenna poked his head into the living room, holding a half-eaten mango. "Kalin, will you bring me something from London? Maybe a football jersey?" he asked, his eyes wide with hope. Kalin rolled her eyes. "If you stop following me around like a mosquito, maybe." Their father, Chaik, chuckled as he entered the room, carrying a stack of neatly folded shirts. "Don't mind your brother, Kalin. He's just jealous he's not the one flying across the world." He placed the shirts in Kalin's suitcase and ruffled her hair. "You'll make us proud, my girl." The house was alive with anticipation, but beneath the joy, there was a faint sense of unease. Amora had always been a cautious woman, and something about the rush to get Kalin ready for the trip. The following morning, the family woke early, their breaths visible in the crisp Harmattan air. Kalin hugged Ikenna tightly, planting a quick kiss on his forehead. "Be good for Mama and Papa, okay?" "I will, I promise," he said, though his mischievous grin suggested otherwise. They piled into the family car, Ikenna coming along for the trip to the airport. The roads were unusually busy, filled with people eager to finish their shopping before Christmas. Kalin leaned her head against the window, dreaming of snow and bright Christmas lights in London. About halfway to the airport, the hum of their journey was shattered by a deafening honk. Kalin sat up, her heart pounding as she saw a massive truck barreling toward them, its brakes screeching but failing to slow it down. "Chaik!" Amora screamed, clutching the dashboard as the truck swerved wildly. Chaik yanked the steering wheel, trying to avoid the collision, but it was too late. The truck slammed into their car, and the world turned into a blur of metal and screams. When Kalin opened her eyes, everything was quiet. Her head throbbed, and the taste of blood filled her mouth. She tried to move, but pain shot through her body. Turning her head slowly, she saw her family, still, lifeless. "Mama," she croaked, her voice barely audible. No response. Darkness claimed her again. When Kalin woke up, the world was a sterile white. The beeping of machines filled her ears, and a nurse hovered nearby. "You're awake," the nurse said softly, her face kind but sad. Kalin blinked, her head heavy. Where am I?" The nurse hesitated before speaking. "You're in the hospital. There was an accident. Do you remember what happened?" Kalin's eyes darted around the room. "Accident?" Her voice trembled. "Where's my mama? My papa? Ikenna?" The nurse bit her lip, tears forming in her eyes. "I'm so sorry, my dear. You're the only one who survived." The words hit Kalin like a hammer. "No," she screamed, thrashing against the bed. "No, you're lying." But deep down, she knew it was true. Days turned into weeks. Kalin sat in her hospital bed, staring blankly at the ceiling. Doctors came and went, speaking in hushed tones about her memory loss and her fragile state. She remembered little beyond her name and fragments of her family's faces. Then one day, a woman walked into the room, her face pale and tear-streaked. "Kalin," she said softly, her voice shaking. Kalin looked up, her eyes dull. "Who are you?" The woman's face crumpled. "It's me, Auntie Efima. I came from London, for you." Kalin tilted her head, her expression blank. "I don't know you," she said flatly. Efima fell to her knees beside the bed, sobbing into her hands. "I'm so sorry," she whispered. "I should have been here. I should have. But no amount of tears could bring back what was lost. It had been 2 weeks since the accident. The hospital room where Kalin lay was cold and quiet, save for the steady beeping of the machines monitoring her vitals. Her face, once lively and full of mischief, was pale, her brown eyes vacant as she stared at the ceiling. She had asked for water earlier, only to immediately forget why she wanted it. Her aunt, Ngozi, sat beside her bed, clutching a handkerchief damp with tears. She had flown in from the UK as soon as she heard about the accident, leaving everything behind to be with the last surviving member of her sister's family. Her grief felt like a weight pressing down on her chest, but guilt burned even deeper. "I should have been here," she whispered, her voice cracking. "I should have brought her over earlier." The doctor had tried to explain Kalin's condition in simple terms, but none of it felt simple to Ngozi. Traumatic brain injury. Memory loss. Recovery uncertain. It all sounded like punishment for a crime she didn't even know she had committed. Kalin turned her head slightly to face her aunt. "Who are you again?" she asked, her voice soft but confused. Ngozi's heart broke anew. "I'm your Aunt Ngozi, sweetheart. Don't you remember? I visited 2 years ago. I brought you that pink dress with the shiny buttons. You loved it so much." Kalin blinked, her brow furrowing slightly. "Pink buttons? No, I don't remember." Her voice grew faint as she turned back to the ceiling. Ngozi swallowed hard, fighting back tears. "It's okay," she said, more to herself than to Kalin. "We'll take it one step at a time." The hospital staff were kind, but the pity in their eyes made Ngozi uncomfortable. Kalin's nurse, a stout woman named Kyoma with a warm smile, often brought extra blankets or snacks for Ngozi. "She's young," Kyoma said one evening, as Ngozi stared out the window of the hospital room. "The brain is a mysterious thing, but there's hope. Children are resilient." Ngozi nodded but said nothing. She wished she could cling to that hope, but the sight of Kalin's blank stares and the occasional frightened look in her eyes made it hard. The first time Kalin asked about her parents, Ngozi froze. "Where's Mama?" Kalin asked one morning, her voice trembling. "And Daddy? And Ikena?" Ngozi's heart stopped. How could she explain this to her niece? How could she put into words the horror of the accident, the shattered glass, the twisted metal, the phone call that had changed everything? They couldn't be here," Ngozi said finally, her voice thick with emotion. "But they loved you very much, Kalin. They always will." Kalin stared at her, her young face a mixture of confusion and sadness. "I miss them," she said softly, though she couldn't fully grasp why. Ngozi bit her lip, her tears falling silently. "I miss them too," she whispered. Weeks passed, and Kalin's progress was slow. She began to recognize Ngozi, but only as the kind woman who sat by her bed every day. Memories of her family, her friends, her home all remained locked away. Ngozi rented a small apartment near the hospital and brought Kalin home once the doctors cleared her for discharge. The apartment was modest, but she decorated it with care, hoping to create a sense of warmth. She filled the shelves with books, hung bright curtains, and placed a photo of Kalin's family on the bedside table, though Kalin never looked at it for long. One evening, as they ate dinner together, Kalin suddenly paused, her fork halfway to her mouth. "Auntie, what's my favorite color?" she asked, her voice tinged with curiosity. Ngozi's chest tightened. "It used to be blue," she said gently. "You loved blue because it reminded you of the sky and the ocean. You'd always say you wanted to live in a house painted blue." Kalin tilted her head, thinking. "Blue? I don't remember that," she said after a moment, her voice carrying a hint of sadness. Ngozi reached across the table and held her hand. "It's okay, Kalin. You don't have to remember everything all at once. We'll figure it out together." But not all moments were gentle. Kalin often grew frustrated with herself, throwing books or tearing up drawings when she couldn't recall something as simple as her own birthday. One afternoon, after Ngozi gently reminded her to take a bath, Kalin snapped. "Why do you care so much?" she shouted, tears streaming down her face. "You're not my mother. You're just some lady pretending to care." Ngozi flinched, her own eyes filling with tears. She wanted to scream back, to remind Kalin of everything she had sacrificed to be here, but instead, she took a deep breath. "I care because I love you," she said softly. "And I'm not going anywhere." Kalin stared at her, anger giving way to confusion and then exhaustion. She slumped onto the couch, burying her face in her hands. I don't know who I am anymore, she whispered. Ngozi sat beside her, wrapping an arm around her shoulders. You're Kalin, she said firmly. And that's enough. Outside the window, life went on. The sun rose and set, children played in the streets, and vendors sold their goods. But for Ngozi and Kalin, the world felt paused, suspended in the delicate space between loss and healing. And somewhere deep inside Kalin, the fragments of her old life stirred, waiting for the right moment to surface. The days turned into weeks, and Kalin's recovery remained a slow, painful journey. Ngozi, though exhausted, never gave up. Each day was a delicate balance of care and patience, a dance of trying to help Kalin rebuild her life while keeping her own grief at bay. One chilly morning, Kalin sat by the window, watching children play in the courtyard of their apartment building. Their laughter echoed faintly, a sound that felt foreign yet comforting. Kalin's small frame was wrapped in a thick blanket, her dark eyes distant but observant. "Aunty," she said suddenly, her voice cutting through the quiet. Ngozi, busy chopping vegetables in the kitchen, looked up. "Yes, my dear? I had a dream last night," Kalin said, her voice soft. Ngozi put down the knife and wiped her hands on a towel before coming to sit beside her. "What was it about?" Kalin hesitated, her brows knitting together in concentration. "I saw a big tree," she said slowly, "and a woman with a bright smile. She was singing to me. I think it was Mama." Ngozi's breath caught. "What did she sing, Kalin?" Kalin frowned. "I don't remember the words, but it made me feel safe. Like I wasn't alone." Ngozi smiled faintly, brushing a strand of hair from Kalin's face. "That's beautiful, my dear. Maybe it's your heart trying to remind you of her love." Kalin nodded, though her expression was tinged with sadness. "I wish I could remember more." Ngozi decided it was time to take Kalin outside. She believed that fresh air and new experiences might help trigger some of her lost memories. That weekend, she brought Kalin to the park. The park was bustling with life, families picnicking under the shade of trees, children flying kites, and vendors selling roasted corn and palm wine. Kalin seemed nervous at first, clinging to Ngozi's hand tightly, but slowly, she began to relax. They stopped by a small pond where ducks swam lazily. Kalin's eyes lit up as she watched them. "Auntie, look," she said, pointing. Ngozi smiled. "Would you like to feed them?" Kalin nodded eagerly, and Ngozi handed her some breadcrumbs. As Kalin tossed them into the water, she giggled at the duck's enthusiasm. It was the first time Ngozi had heard her laugh since the accident, and it brought tears to her eyes. As they walked home later, Kalin seemed lighter, more present. She asked questions about the park, the trees, and the people they'd seen. "You used to love going to the park with your family," Ngozi said gently. "Your dad would chase you around, and your mom would pack sandwiches for everyone. Do you remember that?" Kalin shook her head but smiled. "Maybe someday I will." That night, Kalin asked to see a photo album. Ngozi hesitated for a moment before pulling out an old, worn album from her suitcase. She sat beside Kalin on the couch, and together, they flipped through the pages. "This is your mom," Ngozi said, pointing to a picture of a radiant woman holding a baby Kalin. "Her name was Ada Aura. She was my sister and my best friend." Kalin traced her mother's face with her finger, her eyes misty. "She looks kind," she said softly. "She was," Ngozi said, her voice thick with emotion. "And this is your dad, Chaik. He had the best laugh, it could fill a room." Kalin smiled faintly. "And who's that?" she asked, pointing to a photo of a boy grinning widely. "That's Ikena, your brother," Ngozi replied. "He adored you. He used to call you his little shadow because you followed him everywhere." Kalin stared at the photo for a long time, her expression unreadable. "I wish I could remember them," she whispered. Ngozi placed a hand on her shoulder. "It's okay, Kalin. Memories or not, their love is still with you. It always will be." Over the next few weeks, Kalin began to open up more. She helped Ngozi cook meals, tried drawing pictures of the people she saw in the photo album, and even ventured outside to play with the neighborhood kids. Though the memories of her past remained elusive, small fragments began to surface: a song her mother used to sing, the way her father smelled of cologne and wood shavings, her brother's laughter ringing in her ears. But with each memory came a pang of loss, a reminder of what she could never get back. One evening, as they sat on the balcony watching the sunset, Kalin turned to Ngozi. "Auntie, do you think I'll ever feel normal again?" Ngozi wrapped an arm around her. "Normal is different for everyone, my dear. What matters is that you keep moving forward, little by little. You're stronger than you think." Kalin rested her head on Ngozi's shoulder, her heart heavy but hopeful. For the first time since the accident, she allowed herself to believe that maybe, just maybe, life could be beautiful again. As the months passed, Kalin slowly began to settle into her new life with Ngozi. The small apartment, once unfamiliar and strange, now felt warm and safe. Kalin grew more confident, spending more time outside, laughing with the neighborhood children, and even beginning to enjoy school again. But there were still moments of deep sadness, especially when she saw other children with their families. Watching a father lift his daughter into the air or a mother brushing her child's hair would send a pang through her chest, a reminder of all she had lost. One afternoon, as Ngozi cleaned the house, Kalin approached her with a hesitant look. "Auntie," she began, clutching a piece of paper in her hand. "Yes, my dear," Ngozi replied, glancing up from her work. "I drew something. Can I show you?" Ngozi smiled and nodded. "Of course. Let me see." Kalin unfolded the paper to reveal a drawing of a large tree with vibrant green leaves. Underneath the tree were 4 figures: a man, a woman, a boy, and a little girl holding hands. "This is my family," Kalin said softly, her voice trembling. Ngozi's eyes filled with tears as she took in the image. "It's beautiful, Kalin," she said, pulling the girl into a hug. Kalin sniffled, burying her face in Ngozi's shoulder. "I don't remember everything, but I feel them. I feel their love, even now." Ngozi held her tightly, her heart swelling with both pride and sorrow. "That's because their love is a part of you, Kalin. It will never leave you." As Kalin continued to heal, Ngozi decided to take her to a special place, a small village where she and Aurora had grown up. She hoped that connecting with her roots might help Kalin feel closer to her family. The journey was long, but the lush green fields and the rhythmic hum of the countryside brought a sense of peace. When they arrived, Kalin was greeted warmly by distant relatives and elders who spoke of her parents with fondness. "They were good people," an old woman said, her voice full of warmth. "Your mother, Aurora, had the voice of an angel. And your father, Chike, could fix anything with his hands." Kalin listened intently, soaking up every word. She spent hours exploring the village, climbing trees, and sitting by the river where her mother used to sing. One evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon, Kalin sat with Ngozi by the fire. The flames crackled softly, casting warm light over their faces. "Auntie," Kalin said, breaking the silence, "I think I understand now." "Understand what, my dear?" Ngozi asked, her gaze steady. "I understand that even though they're gone, they're still here," Kalin said, placing a hand over her heart. "In my memories, in the stories people tell, and in the love you've given me." Ngozi smiled, her eyes glistening. "You're right, Kalin. Love doesn't end, even when people do. It's the most powerful thing we have." As they returned to the city, Kalin carried a newfound sense of strength. She began keeping a journal, writing down the stories she heard about her family and the memories that surfaced in her dreams. She wanted to keep their legacy alive, not just for herself but for the world. One day, she showed Ngozi a page from her journal. "I want to write a book," Kalin said, her eyes shining with determination. "A book about my family, so no one will ever forget them." Ngozi's heart swelled with pride. "That's a wonderful idea, Kalin. I'll help you in any way I can." Years later, Kalin's book was published. Titled Roots of Love, it became a powerful testament to resilience, family, and the enduring strength of love. People from all over the world were moved by her story, finding comfort in her words. As Kalin stood at a podium during a book signing event, she looked out at the crowd. Her heart was full, not with sorrow but with gratitude. She had turned her pain into something beautiful, something lasting. In her speech, she said, "We may lose the people we love, But their light never truly fades. It lives on in us, guiding us, and reminding us that love is eternal. And in that moment, Kalin knew she had found her way back to herself.